Good morning, everyone. Jim Clarke here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia to share another contemplative focus with you. Today's contemplative focus that I want to share is all talk about pure being is just more doing. Be, when being dominates becoming, stillness dominates activity. There is no possible explanation or description that can be shared. Stillness is forever stillness, the source and home of all life. So that's the focus I want to share with you today. We used this many years ago, and I still continue to use that in one way or another today. So, being versus becoming, activity versus stillness. So, we actively live a life as a human being. This is our becoming. This is what we do when we're human beings, and it's a natural part of our process, and it does not disappear. So when you're meditating, when you're trying to get to a state of stillness, that is what you experience more so when you're not active. When you're sitting in a meditation, when you're being as still as you possibly can be in a body, and then you develop that focus and you develop it over a lifetime of meditation, that brings you into the experience of stillness. Your body is just there. It's kind of like hosting your experience. And this is what meditation and holistic lifestyle is really all about. Because when you do put a focus on being over becoming, which is very rare in this world, what happens is that you move yourself into another dimension of yourself. You're actually putting a focus on the source of everything. The interior of your being is actually where stillness and emptiness is. And by our understanding today, especially in the quantum fields of study and exploration, it is now pretty well known that creation, the creative process, actually comes from nothingness, because what we call nothingness is really not nothingness. It's really the source of all creation. It only appears as nothingness because we cannot see anything. We don't apprehend what's going on there until we become still. And when we become still, when stillness dominates activity, then we have more access to the experience of stillness within ourselves, and then we start to understand exactly what that is. So that's really what this is all about. It's about shifting your perspective, shifting your focus in life. And why would anybody want to do that? It's like I saw something yesterday on YouTube, I think, and it was about the appearance of yogis and stuff sitting in a cave being still, and people would say, why would anybody want to do that? It looks like it's sort of like a self-torture. But in fact, it's quite the opposite. It's actually moving yourself into a greater level of celebration of your own life. As the momentum increases from the practice of meditation, one of the things that does happen is you start to activate your glands and organs up here, and as that happens, your experience of bliss begins to unfold, and it begins to amplify more and more and more. And so as it does this, what you previously sought out as pleasure is now overwhelmed by a much greater pleasure, a pleasure that is natural and part of your own existence, part of your own being. And once you have that, once you access that and establish that as your experience, then the pull for pleasure in the world of activity ceases to be. It just can't compete with that much pleasure, And you don't get it from somewhere. You already have it. This is what one of the things that people do not understand is that no attempt to get satisfaction and pleasure and safety or any of these things that sound so good from outside of yourself will ever work, because it doesn't exist outside of yourself. Everything outside of yourself is illusion. It's your show. It's what you're creating for your own evolution, for your own journey to go back to where you came from, to your home, to the stillness that is, simply is. Stillness, emptiness, whatever we want to call it, it's the source of our own being. It's the source of all creation. And once we can tap into that and experience that, then we understand what that is. But we also understand there's no way you can describe or you can't share that experience. You can only point to it. You can only encourage people to take the journey for themselves. And that's pretty much about it, because I think there's many examples in regular life that are the same thing. If you're a craftsman or if you're a professional of some kind, you understand at some point that if somebody comes up to you and they want you to tell them how everything works or how to do something that requires years and years of practice, you know that they're not going to get anything out of a quick conversation other than maybe being more excited about taking it on. But to learn anything really, really well, to master anything in this life, requires a consistent focus, a relentless focus, and a lifestyle that is focused to that goal, to that end. And meditation is no different. It's something that you have to do daily. It's something that you have to live to support in terms of eating healthy foods, doing some exercise every day, just basically living as healthy as you possibly can so that your physical body can support the experience of meditation. In other words, so that it can be still as well. Because a body that's very busy with processes that are out of control or processes that are out of balance, like hormones or neurotransmitters and these things, it can't be still because it's constantly trying to find a balance point in itself and not being successful at this, which is why in my experience here over many years, I had to address things in myself that were that were interrupting the flow of my ability to go deeper into my meditation. But if you stick with it and you keep a focus on these things as you go through your life, what you're going to get out of it is something that you take with you. And I don't know of any other endeavor in life where you can say that. Because when you're gone, you're gone. Your body is no longer what you're going to use. You're not going to go anywhere. You're going to be right where you always have been, in the stillness of your own being, which is where you're really living. This is what we call the still point. When you bring yourself to that still point, then the space between the polarities of your experience dilates. And as that dilates, then you can become aware of the fact that you are a witnessing consciousness watching itself. And when you become that aware, when you have that kind of an experience, it just validates all the time that you put into meditative and holistic lifestyle practice. So this is really pretty much what I wanted to share, but there's a little bit more to it, of course, than that, and that is being kind to yourself. Some of the images that I used to see about traditional Eastern meditation, like yogis laying on a bed of nails and things like that, naturally didn't appeal to me at all. And I thought, whoa, if you can have to do that, who would want to? But they were really not hurting themselves. They were really demonstrating that they were so still and so evolved that nails were no longer nails for them. Their body was so subtle that it never felt pain. So it looks like it's an endeavor that's very difficult to do, and in the beginning it is difficult to do. Like most endeavors, we're trying to master something, we're trying to get really good and professional at something that we want to do, then we have to practice and practice and practice. It's the old 10,000 hour rule. You spend enough time developing yourself to master a certain level of professionalism in a job or something, eventually you get there. And then when you get there, you're there. You just stay with it because now you've mastered that. And then it's easy for you. It's not something that you do. It's something that just comes to you. It's like muscle memory. You don't no longer have to keep an arduous study practice other than keeping up with whatever your profession is to maintain that experience of being a professional or a master of some job or something in life, or a sport or whatever it is you want to do. So meditation is no different than that. You just have to stick with it and reach out and try to learn more about it, and to get as help when you need help in terms of understanding what your experience is within meditation, which is one of the things that we do here and have for since it was established in the early 80s. And the reason why that's so is because you're venturing into new territory. When you start to meditate and you start to put a dedicated focus on the interior of your being, you're venturing into territory that you have never consciously explored before. And so you're going to have experiences that are way beyond your understanding. They're great experiences, but what do you do then? Because when you have an experience, when you have what we call a peak experience, where you have a breakthrough and suddenly you go beyond your mind and you open it and you get in that, so maybe it's a vision or something that has a lot of power and energy, and it elevates you and it makes you feel so good and so high, and then it goes, and then you're left with that experience, and the information that you get, that kind of information that you get from a meditative peak experience is there. But then there's also all that information and belief systems that you've acquired through your life is also within you. And so you have a kind of a conflict going on, because now there's new information, and how you incorporate and substantiate that information is a process that you have to understand. Otherwise, you may not be able to do it, and you'll just generate more conflict. In the long run, you'll just not get the results that you're looking for because you don't understand how it works. And so basically what we do is we integrate our processes by putting a focus on them, and allowing what we call a clearing process to happen. And this can be many things. And the reason for this is simply because when you have a meditative experience, when you do get a peak experience that gives you some insight into yourself, that goes way beyond the mind, the power of that experience is much, much more than anything that you ever got from anyone or anything outside of yourself. If you read a book, if you had a great teacher that taught you writing or reading or all these things, these little things we do in life, that information is still okay, but there's a lot of beliefs that you picked up along the way about who you are and what life is for you that's no longer relevant, because that peak experience kind of wiped that out. Now you see that there's much more to your life than you ever could have imagined. And so that information simply has to go. And much of that information will go just because it's up, it gets wiped away and you don't access it. But sometimes we have such attachment or identification to information that's linked to what was within the domain of the mind that it's difficult. And as that is being released, we can sometimes experience discomfort or kriyas, energy fluctuations in our bodies, where we jerk, or suddenly we experience a surge of energy through our nervous system that, it looks like we're kind of being spasmodic. But it's really just the process of taking in the new and getting rid of the old, and then re-identifying. As we become more and more experienced in who we truly are, we gradually get rid of the data that we used to rely upon for definition. this is me and this is what my life is because I have all these beliefs and all this information in me. I was taught by my parents and my friends and my teachers, and so that's what I hooked up with, and this is how I live my life and define myself within that experience. So that information goes little by little by little. And as it goes, then you're more integrated into the new experiences that you're gaining from your meditation experience. So being, when it dominates becoming, when stillness dominates activity, this process gets to be very active, and it's something that every meditator goes through, whether they understand it as I'm describing it here. And it's a process, and it's one that sometimes you just have to endure the process of letting go of old emotions, say, or old information that's triggering different uncomfortable impulses in your nervous system or something like that because of where it was stored in your physicality. So it's a process, and it may seem contrary to what you're trying to do in a meditative lifestyle, but it's really not. It's really a demonstration that whatever you're doing is working, because you wouldn't be experiencing that kind of internal upheaval, data-wise anyway, if your meditation wasn't taking you somewhere. But it does. Meditation with focus and dedication will always give you the results. It's simply a balancing technique that people use to access the interior of their being. And to access it is to develop the power of it. The more time you spend in meditation and contemplation, the faster you develop the power of that polarity in the human experience. That's all. Most people are so immersed and mesmerized by the exterior of their being, the world around them, the people, their friends, the city, the movies, whatever it is. All that stuff outside of yourself is simply a generated form of illusion specific to you. And you can share that illusion with many people, like you live in the same city and so forth and so on, but it's still an illusion. It's very real. It has its own reality, if you will, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what consciousness is creating through you, because you are that same consciousness in the creative process, and your version of that reality is going to be specific for your ongoing evolution back to who you were originally. We start off with gain, and we get born, we don't know who we are, we develop a story about ourselves, and then we try to make that our reality, and of course it never fully works because it's not real, and eventually we get tired of trying to make it work, and we turn inward and we start discovering the real us. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Start to meditate if you're not meditating, and always come to Synchronicity if you need some help, or if you want to find a really good way to meditate, a surefire way. It certainly has worked for everybody that I know that came here and stayed with the practice, whether they live here or not. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, and I'll be back again next Monday to share another contemplative focus with you. Thank you for being here.